Welcome to the Global Wellness HQ family of podcasts. We are your international headquarters for resources and ideas and insight in relation to the 9 elements of holistic wellness. Join us as we interview local and international wellness experts and learn how you can implement and improve one element or dimension of wellness at a time. Our experts will share their practical tips on wellness in one of these core areas: emotional, intellectual, occupational, physical, environmental, financial, spiritual, social, or habitual. We created our family of podcasts as a resource for anyone who is looking to integrate the 9 elements of holistic wellness into their daily lives. Welcome to the show. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Today, I am having a conversation with Toby Pasman. Toby, why don't you tell my viewers a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and Jeff, thank you for having me on the show. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you here today. So, my background is in neurophysiology research. So, I basically study how the brain functions on a chemical and electrical level. And then I basically use certain types of tests, certain brain scans to measure people's brain waves, the electrical rhythms that create our thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and cognitive abilities. And based on people's brain scans, I'm able to see areas of the brain that are underactive, overactive, or producing healthy activity. And then based on that information, I use neurofeedback as a training modality. So it's a neurotechnology that can actually rewire and retrain the brain. So for the past 8 years, I've been working in peak performance centers, substance abuse rehabs, as well as mental health clinics, and became board certified both in QEEG, which is the brain mapping, the type of brain scan, and then also another board certification in neurofeedback. So that's a bit about me. And, I just went super deep into all things about the brain and really being able to apply neuroscience to better our own lives.
I love it. And by the way, fair warning, neuroscience is just one of those areas I happen to dabble. I think I can't remember the name of the author, but there is a neuroscientist slash comedian. His name's Dean something. He wrote a book. I think it's called Your Idiot Brain, and that book led me down this rabbit hole. So you and I are going to have some fun talking about neuroscience. I'm going to ask my favorite question: how did you go down this path? What sparked your interest in neuroscience?
Yeah. So, I guess starting way back, as a kid, I definitely was affected by some family members' mental health issues growing up. I actually lost a close family member to suicide. And really that kind of, I think just from early on kind of showed me just, the devastating effects that can occur when mental health conditions get out of control. And then I started just really becoming really curious in high school, started reading a bunch of pop psychology and neuroscience books about how the brain works. It was just always something that just piqued my curiosity. I think in part because I also suffered from a lot of social anxiety myself in high school and into college. So I always felt awkward and uncomfortable in social situations. It made, friendships as well as dating really difficult, if not impossible. And so it was really kind of my own journey of realizing, that I needed to sort of fix my own issues in order to, really live the life that I wanted to live. And by, kind of learning about how the brain actually functions, I was able to record a brain scan on myself. And I saw that an area of my left frontal lobe called Broca's area that's really important for verbal fluency, which is something that that was a big part of my social anxiety, was I could never think of the right word. I always had awkward pauses and was stumbling over words. So it made communicating very difficult. And that area of my brain in my brain scan was actually very underactive. So it helped me put the pieces together and understand why I was experiencing the issues that I was. And then through the use of neurofeedback and neurostimulation training, which we can talk about later, I was able to actually help, improve the functioning of that particular area of my brain, which then led to seeing great improvements in my verbal fluency and also my social anxiety. So it was really kind of, seeing, learning about this stuff and then actually applying it firsthand, as well as, working with all of these different people from all walks of life, who some of them had social anxiety as well, but people with ADHD, depression, anxiety, addictions, you name it, traumatic brain injuries. I work with all types of people who've experienced their own life transformations as the result of, doing this sort of brain training.
I love that. Now, we're going to go down some rabbit holes today. I have this sense. Now, one of the things I want to bring out front is you mentioned rewiring your brain, and I know a lot of people seem to think that the brain is what it is, it's fixed. So I'm going to ask you a question. I think we're going to be the launch pad for our conversation. How can people rewire their brains to maximize their impact in the world?
It's a great question. The truth is our brains are constantly rewiring themselves, whether we like it or not. This is a process that's taking place throughout our entire adult life. And up until a few decades ago, neuroscientists actually used to think that, as we grew up, as our brains kind of solidified in adolescence, that, we couldn't really grow new connections, that our brain cells just started dying off, and that our brain was kind of fixed. But that notion has been completely debunked by the field of neuroplasticity. So we now understand that the brain is constantly changing and actually able to grow new brain cells. So this is a process known as neurogenesis that takes place particularly in the hippocampus, which is an area of the brain really important for learning and memory. So we know that this process actually takes place throughout throughout someone's entire adult life. So neuroplasticity can work, both in someone's favor as well as to their detriment. For example, if you have a head injury, you could go from a completely, highly functioning, competent, business leader, successful individual to really like not being able to function after a head injury. So that's neuroplasticity. That's your brain rewiring in a negative way. Or say with trauma, people experience a super traumatic event and then their brain has kind of gotten stuck on that trauma and they experience PTSD. So the brain can rewire itself in a negative way, but at the same time, also through positive experiences, through feeding the brain, healthy nutrition, getting really high quality sleep, sunlight exposure, a lot of just basic things people can do to really help their brain change in the right direction. Another big one is social interaction. So, social isolation, which people experienced a lot with the pandemic, resulted in so many more mental health issues, or at least exacerbated them, because we're social beings. We thrive when we're, living and friends with other people. So that really, is another big factor in terms of neuroplasticity, how you can rewire your brain for peak performances, proper nutrition, proper sleep, exercise, social interactions, all of that stuff, the basic things are, I think the right place for most people to start.
I love that. And I think there's a lot of things we can go down that path. Now, let's start at the beginning. And, basically, I'm going to guess people are listening to this and they're either in one of two camps. One, they're curious and they want to learn more, or they're thinking, okay, these two just went crazy. Those people, I wish you well. You can stop listening now because we're going to keep going down this path. Um, what does working with Toby look like? Like, how, because one of the things I do find, and I'm in Canada, so this might be different. Um, a lot of the things you're talking about, the scans and things like that, aren't readily available. And when I go talk to my family doctor, they roll their eyes, cross their arms, and say, "Okay, do you want a prescription?" Or, they're trying to roll you through because they're overworked. So,
Right.
first question, how do people, what kind of scans are we talking about, and how do people get those scans?
Yes, it's a great point that you brought up that brain mapping as well as neurofeedback have not quite worked their way into the mainstream. They're becoming kind of popular in certain niches like the biohacking community, but just like a lot of, well, I don't even want to call, because these things aren't new technologies. They've just traditionally been buried away in research labs, in clinics. So neurofeedback or brain mapping, they're nothing new. They've been around for decades. They've had research, thousands of research studies to back up all of these technologies for decades. But as you're alluding to, most people and most physicians are not really aware of these things. They may have heard of it. Most people that end up becoming clients of mine have actually never even heard about these things. So really, I think in large part due to big pharma, and kind of as you're alluding to, doctors, I don't think it's their fault necessarily, each individual doctor, but just the way the system is set up, where it's just, the model of, giving people a diagnosis and then giving people a medication to, quote, supposedly treat that diagnosis, or, talk therapy, which I have nothing against talk therapy, but I do have, countless people that I've worked with who have been in therapy for years, and talking about their problems just really never got them, rid of the issues that were plaguing their lives. So really, I think that my goal with what I'm doing is helping bring these technologies that have traditionally kind of been buried away and pushed aside, and helping bring these to the mainstream. So now with clients that I work with, I see people in person in South Florida, in Fort Lauderdale and Miami, but I also am able to directly ship people a device that actually enables them to record a brain scan as well as to do the neurofeedback training. So now, people nationwide, worldwide are able to get access to this technology. So, are just able to send it to them, and then I go over someone's brain scan over Zoom, and then they're able to do the neurofeedback training. They're able to set themselves up with the electrodes and do the training whenever they want and wherever they are. If they want to do it at home, at the office, or taking it on trips. I work with a lot of busy business people that are constantly traveling. So what I love about this mobile device is, you're just able to fit it in like a headphone case, and you're able to scan your brain and train your brain wherever you are.
And I love those two pieces, and by the way, I have some reservations about talk therapy as well, because you're replaying the same soundtrack. Your brain is not changing, you're just reinforcing the patterns. And again, I know there are people who need talk therapy. I know there are cases where talk therapy can help. But when I'm looking at the peak performance world, um, talk therapy has its limits, and it has its uses. It's just so let's talk about how you work with peak performance, and what kind of let's use the word methodologies are you using for them, and what's the science behind it?
Absolutely. So really, to start off, the premise with everything that I do is being able to actually measure what the brain is doing, see which areas of the brain are either underactive or overactive, as well as looking to see how different networks in the brain are communicating, as well as the left and right hemispheric balance, how both hemispheres are communicating with one another. So it's all a scientifically driven approach to first measuring what someone's brain's actually doing. There's a psychiatrist and neuroscientist, world renowned, who a lot of your listeners probably have heard of, Dr. Daniel Amen, who he has this quote where he says that psychiatry or psychiatrists are the only medical professionals that don't actually examine the organ in which they're treating. If you think about, if you have a heart issue, and you go to a cardiologist, they're not going to just ask you questions about, oh, you're having chest pain, what's that? Like, they're going to stick the EKG on and actually get a measurement of what's going on. So I think that the way psychiatry is operated, the way it operates today is no different than it operated, 100 years ago. It's the same, telling someone your symptoms, getting a diagnosis, getting usually a medication or talk therapy. It's very outdated. So neuroscience can really provide a solution for a lot of people, because with all sorts of mental health issues, there's an underlying biological issue. And we know that because, with different tests measuring neural inflammation, the more inflammation someone has in their brain, the more likely they are to be depressed, to have anxiety and different mental health disorders. Traumatic brain injuries are very, very associated with different mental health conditions, traumas. So all of these things really change the brain on a biological level. Now, with brain scanning, we can actually measure what those changes are and see, for each unique person, two people reporting depression, they could have very different looking brains. For one person, they could have an underactive frontal lobe. For the second person, they could have issues with the temporal lobe that sits above and behind the ears here. So it's very, there's subtypes of each different type of condition. There's multiple types of ADHD, of depression, anxiety, and really without doing a brain scan, you don't really know what specifically is going on. So with clients, that's always how I start. It's always starting with the brain scan. And then after that, in terms of how to actually rewire and retrain the brain, there's a technology called neurofeedback, which is basically where you're hooked up to electrodes kind of in the same way as we would do with the brain scan. But instead of simply measuring what's going on with neurofeedback, we're training the brain to create healthier brainwave rhythms. So how that looks is that people are playing like a video game kind of with their mind. So what I mean by that is they choose some kind of game where, say, there's one game that's like a spaceship game where you're flying a spaceship, and the better you're doing, the healthier brainwaves that you're producing, the spaceship will fly higher and the audio tones will get louder. So that's the positive reinforcement telling the brain, good job, keep doing whatever it is that you're doing to get that reward. So for instance, say we're interested in training someone to be able to focus. Beta brainwaves are really important for focus, and oftentimes people with ADHD who struggle with focus have deficiencies within beta. So with neurofeedback, we can reward the brain whenever it starts producing more of those focused beta brainwaves through the use of that reward, the spaceship flying higher and the audio getting louder. And then when someone starts mind wandering, they start drifting off, and their brainwaves get out of that healthy beta rhythm, they start producing more slower, inattentive alpha and theta brainwave patterns, then they're going to lose the reward. So the spaceship's going to start flying lower and the audio is going to get a lot quieter. So this is basically providing the brain real-time feedback. So within 100 milliseconds, basically quicker than our conscious mind can even process information, it's giving the brain that real-time feedback on when it's doing well versus when it needs to self-correct. So through the use of this training, it's not like taking a pill where you might instantly feel like super strong effects. I compare neurofeedback to something like exercise, where, if you're not regularly exercising and you go and work out really hard at the gym, it's going to be beneficial, but you're not going to wake up the next day with perfect physique. You're not going to get in great shape from going one time. Right. So it's a process, and training the brain is also a process. So from the very first session, your brain starts creating the new neural pathways that are associated with healthier brain functioning, but the brain will always try to revert back to homeostasis, to what it's always known, even if that's a dysfunctional pattern, because the brain craves that comfort and familiarity. So in order to really bust past that, we got to do several, well, really ideally 20 to 30 or even 40 neurofeedback sessions. In the research literature, that seems to be what it takes to get super long lasting, significant improvements, both measured with people's brain scan, but also as far as how people are actually feeling. So once that number of sessions has been completed, that's given the brain the chance to create those new neural pathways and then get that repetition in. So the pathways become solidified and people can really rewire their brain long term.
I love that. Now, what's sort of the timeline from sort of the scan to starting the treatment to seeing the results? Because I think a lot of people, and I'm going to stress that I assume this is long term. You want to keep doing the things that add value, but is this a one and done, or is it sort of, a new habit you're adopting into your life forevermore?
So it honestly, it can vary person to person. I have clients who, do a 2-month program. They do, 20 to 40 neurofeedback sessions, and then they feel like they're able to get long lasting benefits even without needing to do any further sessions. Other people enjoy doing ongoing neurofeedback in the same way as, continuing an exercise regimen to keep the body in good shape. Continuing to do neurofeedback is a great way to keep your brain in optimal shape. So that's what's really cool about, the at-home program, is that instead of people having to come into the office, they're able to do the sessions on their own and they own the device. So they're able to continue doing sessions as long as they want.
Okay, and I think that's the key piece. They own the device, so it's up to them. It's kind of owning a treadmill is only going to get you so far. If you are not using said treadmill, you're not going to get the results.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why I really, I don't just give people the device and, tell them, all right, off you go. That's really why, I built a whole program around, doing the brain scan to answer your question before. Basically, after doing the brain scan, then I go over someone's results with them and then put them on the neurofeedback protocol. So the first session that they do is the brain scan. Then we go over the results and they start doing the neurofeedback training. And, being able to do that at home. Sorry, I forgot. I completely lost track. We were just remind me what you were just saying.
Well, we were just talking about owning the device and using the device are two different things. So
Right. Yeah. So I think I was just, I need to do some more neurofeedback training myself. But yeah, anyway, so I was just saying that, being able to continuously do, more sessions and actually have that accountability, because a lot of people will buy some different, neurotech devices, and I'll ask them, oh, okay, so, you own this, but how often are you actually using it? And they're saying, oh, no, it just, sits on my shelf. So that's really why I think the accountability component is so helpful in actually working with clients one-on-one and going through their training results, going through, a training plan with them in the same way that an exercise trainer is going to create a nutrition plan, create a workout plan for someone, and then actually be there to hold them accountable. It's often going to, get people a lot better results than if they're going to just go set out on doing that on their own.
I love that. And I think that's the importance, if you're dealing with peak performance, you need accountability, not just here's the thing, go do it.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, in the same way, if someone is, growing a business, they have a coach. If you're playing sports, you have a coach. If, going to the gym, like someone to make sure that you're doing all the lifts properly, you can have a trainer. So anytime that there's feedback from a professional, you're going to really accelerate your results rather than if you're to just go about it by yourself.
I love that. And I think that's the difference between the do-it-yourselfers. They get certain results and then, oh, squirrel, they get distracted and then they stop. Now, what kind of things are people coming to you with? What are, somebody raising their hand saying, Toby, I really need your help. What are the things they're asking for your help with?
So it's usually that they know that they're not achieving everything that they can because their brain is not functioning the way it used to. So for whatever reason, something has gone on and someone is no longer as productive, as focused, as stress, as able to regulate stress as they used to be. So they're trying to get back to what they know as their peak capacity. They know what they're capable of, and they're trying to get back there. So oftentimes it's, dealing with brain fog, dealing with low brain energy from poor nutrition, poor, exercise or just lifestyle, stuff like that. But also dealing with, issues, mood issues, as well as sleep issues is another super common one that people come to me for. That neurofeedback actually works really well for, is improving someone's ability to both fall and stay asleep. So I would say, the productivity, minimizing distractions, getting better sleep, and cutting through brain fog would be some of the most common things that my clients tell me that they're really wanting to work on.
Love that. Now, sorry, I think you answered this, but I'm going to just circle back. You're based in Fort Lauderdale. Do people have to come to you, or do you work with people around the world? What's your geography?
Yeah, so previously, prior to a few months ago, I was completely in person where I would see people in Fort Lauderdale or Miami, but people outside of the area, I wasn't really able to work with them. So with this virtual program, I'm now able to ship someone the device. So they actually buy the device that allows them to do the brain scan, to record like a mini brain map, as well as to do neurofeedback training. So anyone, anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, I actually just talked to a couple people in Dubai and one person in Barbados the other day, who are interested in helping, get neurofeedback into these other areas that, no one's really doing neurofeedback in some of these other areas around the world. So I'm really looking to be able to expand and be able to work with people from all around the world, because I think everyone, can benefit from the use of this technology. And as we kind of talked about before, so few people have actually heard about it.
Well, and it fascinates me, and I'm going to oversimplify my understanding of neuroscience, but the reality is the brain is literally our command center. It's the, where the electricity flows, more or less. I think it controls things, and to not take steps to optimize that flow, it's, again, I think it's fascinating, as you said, that psychiatry is more or less today what it was back in the day when Jung and Freud were fighting over who had the right ideas. I mean, for all the advancements we've made in technology, we still treat the brain. I've had MRIs, which really truly it's a blunt instrument for a very precise, we're talking about thousands of a micrometer in a brain, synapse gaps and things like that. I love this neurofeedback idea because, electricity can be redirected. It can be shaped and taught to flow in a proper direction. Is that a fair comment, or did I fall off
No,
the board?
no, you're right. I mean, so the brain communicates both on a chemical and electrical level. So people are more familiar with the different neurotransmitters, the different brain chemicals like serotonin and dopamine. So people have all heard about those. That, for whatever reason, has kind of been given more popular attention compared to the electrical signals. So the electrical rhythms are the brain waves that I'm talking about and have been talking about.
Yeah.
And the reason that, within the field of neuroscience, or at least applied neuroscience, the reason that we're mainly working on measuring and training the electrical activity of the brain is it's significantly easier to measure than the chemicals. So in order to accurately measure the chemicals within your brain, we'd have to do a spinal tap. that is not going to be too fun. It's going to be hard to just, pitch people on that.
Yep.
So instead, the research has been conducted a lot more measuring someone's brainwave activity, because we can do that completely non-invasively with a swim cap looking device called an EEG. So this cap sits on someone's head and it measures from a bunch of different areas all across the scalp, measures the electrical activity that emanates from the brain up to the surface of the scalp. And then these electrodes are actually able to pick up that recording, and I'm able to view it on my computer. So the brain, chemical as well as electrical, that's what's creating all of our thoughts, emotions, behaviors, cognitive abilities, and really our whole experience of the world, our whole consciousness on a biological level. It comes down to the brain waves and neurotransmitters.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I saw one neurologist. I had a concussion, and his solution, you'll appreciate this or not, we'll see. His solution was, we're going to wait till you die. We'll conduct an autopsy, and then I can tell you exactly what's wrong with your brain. And
Oh
I
my
went,
God.
wow, let's call that Plan C. Because right now I'm inconveniently alive to you, and I'm not willing to take slices of my brain and put it on a microscope glass. But I like the idea of the biofeedback, the electrical feedback, because I do find with the chemical side of things, we're still, there's a lot of guesswork. Because again, there's no feedback. They're not, it's more, describe how you feel, or let's talk about this. And it's like, I feel that, chemistry is a precise science, yet neurochemistry, again, I'm not lining up to get a spinal tap anytime soon, but, the ability to take a sample is not as easily, you can't take a biopsy of a mole, and it's not quite the same. So
And we actually know now that there's been some different meta-analyses that have come out in the past year where it's actually disproven that chemical imbalance theory of depression, where they used to think that, for so long, people have just thought, oh, if you have low levels of serotonin in your brain, that's the cause of depression. That is actually based on some faulty research, in which now they're realizing that that's not actually the case. That serotonin does play a role in our mood, but there's so many other factors. So even though we think of this as like a precise science of like neurochemistry, there's a lot that, I think in 10, 20 years, they're going to look back, neuroscientists, I'm going to look back in 10, 20 years and realize, wow, today we really did not know much at all compared to where we're going.
yeah.
And just to add on to what you were saying, as far as with the neurologist, it's really sad, because I have a lot of clients who have the exact same experience where they're told, that really the only, treatment for a concussion is to just, let the brain heal. And that occurs for some people, but a lot of times other people, their brain does not actually get back to normal functioning. They have behavioral changes. They no longer are able to focus or have the same mental energy that they used to have. Their sleep is disrupted. Traumatic brain injuries are the cause of so many different mental health issues. So really it comes down to, knowing how to actually properly deal with these things. So things like neurofeedback can be helpful. I used to actually work for a neurologist who had a three-pronged approach to treating traumatic brain injuries, where he would use neurofeedback as well as hyperbaric oxygen therapy. So hyperbaric oxygen is basically a great way to fully oxygenate our system. It brings more blood flow and oxygen throughout all the different tissues and cells within our body. And our brain is so metabolically active, it consumes so much of our energy that it responds really, really well to this hyperbaric oxygen therapy. So people dealing with concussions, traumatic brain injuries, they really benefit quite a lot from that. And there's some other different modalities that can be helpful too. But I think the notion that neurologists believe that, the brain will just heal itself is kind of faulty. For some people, maybe they can, have a head injury and then feel like they're fine. But usually when you start digging a bit and really asking questions, they're not actually fine. There's something that, oh, their memory wasn't what it used to be before the injury, or their personalities changed a bit. They're forgetting words. Like, there'll be subtle changes because, when the brain has been damaged from a, physical trauma, the mitochondria, the parts of our cells that create energy, those parts of our cells become really damaged. So the brain is not generating proper cellular energy wherever the injury has occurred. So in order to really restore proper energy production, it needs, that's involved in restoring proper blood flow and oxygen to the area of the brain that was affected. So the hyperbarics, as well as another modality, it's quite a mouthful, brain photobiomodulation, also known as red and infrared light therapy. So
Okay.
you've probably seen, have you seen those like light devices that people stand in front of, those like red light panels? So
Yeah.
it's that same technology, but there's actually a bunch of different devices that are specifically made for the brain. And what those do is they greatly drive more blood flow and oxygen to the brain. They reduce neural inflammation, and they actually promote neurogenesis, the growth of new neurons and new connections amongst those cells. So that's another amazing modality for people to heal their brain from past head injuries.
And I actually had one practitioner who used I think it was called cold laser therapy or blue light therapy. And um, that I remember I had one treatment and I came home and my wife said, literally, I can see the lights are on again. It was
Wow.
just because I was just a zombie for the longest time. And, you walk around in this fog and that was just an aha moment. It was like, because my neurologist basically said, this is your new normal, accept it as it is. I went to an ophthalmologist and she said, this is your new normal, accept it as it is. And I was like, I don't want to be a zombie. I want to get back to the way I was. And so that's part of why I went down this path of creating my podcast. I like to explore the uncommon things, and we're not necessarily saying go do this or go do that, but it's good to know what some of the options are. And I find it fascinating if you look at neuroscience. The last 90 years we got to very little. We sort of crudely, we have a diagram and we understand the shape of the brain and the makeup of it. The last decade we've sort of kind of started to understand the the composition of it. I think in the next decade or two we're going to see quantum leaps forward, because again now we're recognizing, with the power of an EEG, you can see what's going on in the brain. And
Absolutely. Well said.
I have some friends who've been in stroke research. Um, that's a fascinating field because we used to believe that the brain, it was injured and it'll heal or not heal. We can't do anything about it. Um, so now I'm seeing more research into, what effect does the stroke have? And one researcher I'm following, I'll just share this with you. Um, they're actually they were brought in to help people with nonverbal use their brain waves to communicate with the world. And the initial thought was, to teach somebody how to speak using a computer. Um, but one of the things they're finding is, with the right technology, we can control the electricity in our brain so that we can actually they're working on a mouseless computer that is connected to our brain waves. So it's amazing to see the power of the brain. And it's just it's odd to me that we can take a human being apart from the neck down and reassemble them, yet the brain, we're still kind of like, it's we don't know what all these pieces do or how they all engage. But I think we're going to see more, as we bring the electricity in. Something tells me that the more electrical feedback we've got, we're going to see a clearer picture of the chemical composition as well.
Mm-hmm. And there's already a whole field of, treatment for different brain issues, relating specifically to actually giving the brain kind of an external electrical input. So neurostimulation has actually been around since like the 1950s, 1960s. It was a very crude technology back in the time with, back at the time with ECT, or electroconvulsive therapy. People think like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and, shock therapy. So neurostimulation has evolved quite a bit further than that. So today, just to give people kind of a reference, the neurostimulation that I utilize with clients, as well as what's being studied in research labs around the country and around the world, is basically it's a very low level of stimulation, somewhere around like 1 to 2 milliamps of electricity. So to give you a reference, electroconvulsive therapy is 600 to 700 milliamps of electricity.
That
So
involves the mouth guard and the
yeah, I would not. I mean, what's crazy, it's actually still used up to this day as like a last line of treatment for, depression. People have tried all sorts of other things. They actually still do electroconvulsive therapy. It has a slew of different side effects. People can have like severe memory loss. I would not recommend it to anyone, but the same idea of passing an electrical current through the brain, albeit at a much, much lower level, instead of to actually shock the brain, it's simply to gently guide the brain to create healthier brainwave patterns, is actually a remarkably effective tool.
I like the image of that much better than I've seen the I'm gonna call it shock therapy. I've seen it. It doesn't look pleasant. And I get that it's for an extreme thing, but the brain is gentle. It needs a little bit of massage, not a not a sledgehammer coming through. Um well, I could talk to you about this all day, Toby, and I appreciate having you on the show. How can people get in touch with you to learn more about working with you and getting to the point where they can reset their rewire their brains? I think were your words.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's capable, anyone who's listening, no matter where you're at in terms of your brain health, no matter what sort of issues you're currently dealing with, you are not stuck with the brain that you have. Because of neuroplasticity, you can rewire and change and improve your brain. You just need to be empowered with the right tools to be able to do so. So that's what I really help people to do. And for the listeners who are interested, I would recommend people shoot me a DM on Instagram. Give us a follow at Neuroflex on Instagram. You can shoot me a message. I'd be happy to hear anyone's feedback on this episode, any questions that you might have. And then you can also find us. The website is www.neuroflex.tech, and people can find me there as well. But I recommend everyone go to the Instagram, and then that's kind of the jumping off point to booking a call with me, as well as finding some different pages on the website that will help you learn more about brain mapping, neurofeedback, neurostimulation, and a lot more about, everything that we discussed today.
I love it. Well, Toby, you are the expert at being Toby. Is there anything I should have asked you that we haven't discussed yet?
I think overall, Jeff, you asked some really great questions. I think really it's just leaving people with that message that I just said, that you really, despite the fact that initially, as you brought up at the very start of the recording today, that a lot of people are still stuck in that mindset where they think their brain can't change, that they're just stuck with whatever they have. I mean, that's so many of the clients that I work with, they have been diagnosed with anxiety, depression, PTSD, and they view that as like a death sentence. They feel like they're going to deal with that issue till the day that they die. What they don't realize, and what they need to realize, is that their brain is plastic. It's constantly able to change and rewire itself. So whatever issues you're having today is the result of how your brain is functioning on a biological level. Once you know what imbalances there are, you can go about retraining your brain, and you can shed all of these different issues that you may think that you're stuck with, that you might have to live the rest of your life forgetting names, forgetting words, not being able to focus, having mood swings, all these things that in reality, when you actually enhance the brain, the underlying biology of the brain, you can improve so many things about the quality of your life. So we really just want people to have that, that takeaway message.
I love it. And by the way, Toby, I don't know what this says about Jeff as a human being, but I can't help but think I really desperately, I don't know how I've lived without having a brain map. I feel like that's one of those things we should all just have. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but
I'm biased, but I agree with you.
I love it. Well, Toby, I want to thank you for being on the show. It was a real pleasure. And I look forward to having future conversations with you as this industry evolves.
Absolutely, Jeff. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come on your platform and just share this with your listeners.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to our show. We hope that you enjoyed this episode, and we invite you to either click the link below or scan the QR code to register and listen to other episodes of our podcast. Or if you think your business or you would be a great guest to be on our show, we're always looking for experts in one of the 9 elements of holistic wellness. We'd love to have you. You can either click the link below or you can scan the QR code and complete our speaker intake form. Thank you, and to your wellness.